So today, we're going to break down Operation Epic Fury, a conflict that on the surface lasted just 38 days. But as we'll see, it was like a stone tossed into a pond, sending out shockwaves that nobody saw coming, and that changed, well, pretty much everything. Let's get into it.
You know, it all kicked off with this statement. Just incredibly blunt, right? From the U.S. Secretary of War. Iran's navy is at the bottom of the sea. From the American point of view, this wasn't just a win. It was total annihilation. This one sentence really framed the entire official story from day one.
And the thing is, this all happens so fast. I mean, look at this timeline. February 28th, the operation kicks off. Less than 2 weeks later, Iran has a new supreme leader in the middle of a war. And then, by April 7th, it's over. A ceasefire is announced. Just 38 days. That's all it took to completely upend the Middle East, and as we're about to find out, the rest of the world too.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the initial splash, the war itself. Then, we're going to follow the ripples as they spread out. The first is that shaky ceasefire. The second, a massive global economic shock. And the third ripple, well, that's a crisis nobody predicted. And finally, we'll look at where all this has left us, the new reality.
All right, let's dive into that first part, the splash. We're starting with the immediate impact of the war, specifically from the perspective of the U.S. military, which was reporting a complete and total success. And when you look at the numbers, it's just staggering. The Pentagon reported hitting over 13,000 targets. Think about it, 90% of Iran's navy just gone. Most of their air defenses, their nuclear facilities, their missile program, all of it functionally destroyed. From a purely military standpoint, this looked like an absolute slam dunk.
Okay, so militarily, a huge success, right? But that's where the story gets complicated, because a military victory and a political victory are two very different things. Let's move to that first ripple, the ceasefire. Because behind all the victory parades, the two sides had completely opposite ideas of what peace was even supposed to look like.
And this slide right here, it just lays the whole problem bare. On one side, the US says the whole point of the war was to force Iran to give up its nuclear weapons program. On the other side, Iran's main demand for peace was, you guessed it, the world had to accept its right to nuclear enrichment. These two things just can't exist in the same reality. The war was over, but the reason the war started was never actually solved.
And believe me, it didn't stop there. Iran also demanded an end to all sanctions, money for war damages, full control over the world's most important oil choke point, the Strait of Hormuz, and all U.S. troops out of the region. Now, does that sound like a list of surrender terms to you? No. It was the list of demands from a country that, even after all its military losses, did not see itself as beaten.
So, with this standoff, this unresolved conflict, Iran played its trump card. And that leads us straight to our second ripple, a massive global economic shock. Because while the diplomats were arguing, Iran used the one weapon it had left, its location, to hold the entire world's energy supply hostage.
20 million. Just let that number sink in for a second. 20 million barrels of oil per day just gone from the market. Instantly. That isn't just a disruption, folks. That's a catastrophic failure of the global energy supply on a scale we have never, ever seen. And oil was only part of the story. See that big chunk of the chart? That's 20% of the entire world's supply of liquefied natural gas, or LNG. And because it all came from Qatar, through that now-closed strait, poof, it vanished. A fifth of the global supply disappeared overnight, putting power grids from Europe to Asia on the brink of collapse.
So what happens when you pull that much energy off the market? Well, prices went through the roof, obviously. Brent crude shot up to $126 a barrel. And that's not just a number for Wall Street. That's a tax on the entire global economy. It's something everyone feels, everywhere. At the gas pump, at the grocery store, everywhere.
But okay, high gas prices are one thing. The real story, the hidden one, goes so much deeper. And to get there, we've got to look at some of the analysis that came out after the initial shock, from places like the International Journal for Multidisciplinary Research, which started connecting the dots.
And this is where things get really wild. This is our third ripple, the one almost nobody saw coming. We're talking about the hidden connection between a war in the Middle East and the food on your plate.
So, what is this connection? It's something we're calling the fertilizer LNG paradox. And it's actually pretty simple when you break it down. You need natural gas, that LNG we were talking about, to make most modern nitrogen fertilizers. It's a key ingredient, the primary feedstock. So, no gas, no fertilizer. And no fertilizer, well, global farming is in big, big trouble.
You can see the dominoes fall right here. The blockade stops the gas from Qatar. The global gas supply tanks. Suddenly, the key ingredient for fertilizer vanishes. Global production of urea, a key fertilizer, drops by a shocking 40%. And the timing? It was just the worst imaginable, hitting right as farmers across Asia were starting their most important planting season.
35%. That's how much fertilizer costs jumped in just 3 weeks. Now, for a small farmer in South Asia, that's not just a price hike. That is a direct threat to their entire harvest, their livelihood, and the food supply for hundreds of millions of people. So all of this, the war, the blockade, the food crisis, it all leads us here to the new reality. Because what really ended wasn't just the 38-day conflict. It was an entire way of thinking about how our globalized world works.
It's really a shift from one philosophy to another. For decades, we lived in a just-in-time world, right? Everything was about maximum efficiency, all based on the assumption that the shipping lanes would always be open. The new reality? It's all about energy sovereignty. Forget efficiency. The new game is about survival, resilience, and having physical control of your resources.
So, what does this new playbook look like? Well, you're seeing nations scrambling to build up strategic reserves, not just of oil, but of things like fertilizer. They're rushing to build new trade routes to bypass these dangerous choke points. And here's the really ironic twist. Green tech, like hydrogen and these new small modular nuclear reactors, are suddenly being seen not just as tools for sustainability, but as vital weapons in the arsenal of national security. Which really leaves us with this final, very difficult question. In a world that feels more fractured, more dangerous than before, what becomes more important? Is it security or is it sustainability? That's the tough choice that every country is now facing. It's the central question of this new world we find ourselves in.